How is a law made? A draft is a text which, in the opinion of the submitter, could become a law, but which must be consulted before its final completion. Only after the approval of Riigikogu will the draft become a law that everyone must comply with, but this process takes a long time. Most drafts come from the government, but they can also be submitted by the members of Riigikogu. Based on the content of the submitted draft, the head of Riigikogu will determine which committee will deal with it. There are 11 standing committees in Riigikogu. If the author of a draft is worried about the purity of our nature, the issue will be discussed in the Environmental Committee. If a draft expresses a wish to shorten the time of service in the Defence Forces, this will be discussed in the National Defence Committee. The exception is 3 members at the head of the Parliament, who may only take part of the Committee of European Union Affairs. The discussion of the draft is called reading. Suppose that Mikkel Mehikne, a member of the Riigikogu, submits a draft which would prohibit chewing in a public place. He justifies his wish by saying that chewing is only appropriate for cows, who are animals, and therefore sometimes misbehave. It is not appropriate for a person to twist his mouth when he sees others. It is ugly to look at, and besides, the words are confusing and twisted. The head of the Riigikogu directs this draft to the Cultural Committee. There, the matter is discussed from several angles and opinions are put to vote. If the majority of the members of the committee consider this a good idea, the draft will be discussed in the meeting hall or the chamber. Discussing in the meeting hall is called reading because all lines of the text are read and thought through word by word and letter by letter. First of all, the submitter of the draft will make an explanatory speech. Afterwards, he must answer questions. Mr. Mehine tells everyone that in every decent home, children are taught not to speak with their mouths full, although, unfortunately, nowadays on TV, there are shown athletes who chew during the interviews as well as during the award ceremonies. Following an initial introductory discussion, it is decided to complete the reading and take the draft to the second reading. After the first reading of the draft, between the 2 readings, members of the Riigikogu can submit their opinions and proposals on the draft to the leading committee. If we remain faithful to Mikkel Mehi's draft initiated in the previous chapter, then, for example, someone might want to add a condition that chewing can be prohibited for a performer on television, but on the street you can do it with your mouth closed. Some people think that other activities that disturb the eyes of others should be banned as well, such as eating a pie in the street or cleaning your nails in the theatre. If Riigikogu does not interrupt the second reading, it shall be deemed completed and refer to the third reading. The third reading of the draft will open negotiations, during which one representative from each political group may speak. So each draft goes through 3 readings. Not far from being ripe. In the end, the draft will be put to a final vote. The result will be announced by the chairman, for example, that for 42 against 17 members of Riigikogu, abstentions 4. The law has been passed, and according to the old custom, he confirms what he said with a knock of a wooden hammer against the table. In the final vote, the number of votes in favour and against decide whether the bill will become a law or will be forgotten. In order to do the same process all over again, someone has to start all of this from scratch. This means that a new draft must be written, which will then be presented in the chamber a few days later, and so on. Ripe but not immediately edible. However, passing a law in the parliament does not mean that it's ready. The law needs to be signed by the president and printed properly and then published in Rigi Teataja. Only after this it can be followed as a proper law.